Hello everyone and welcome to yet another live coding and chill. I'm your host Johnny, delighted to be here. Hope you're having an amazing weekend. Let me know what you're up to. Let me know how your day and your weekend and your life is going. Today we'll keep replatforming our Emoji of the Day app, which you can find online. Doesn't do anything too fancy so far, but we've spent quite a bit of time replatforming from Vercel, where it was hosted before, using a Swab-based storage backend for storing the pics of the emoji of the day, to Cloudflare. And we still use SvelteKit. When we first created this app, it was React back in 2020. The backend was GraphQL. We were using Apollo back then, back in the day. Mostly because I like to use these side projects to learn new things that I think are interesting. Could be great solutions in the future, but for something like this, I've switched in 2023 to the meta framework approach, where you're using something like Next.js or SvelteKit or Nuxt or whatever you're using, and you have both the front-end UI and your backend APIs essentially in the same project. We kept SvelteKit for that reason. And today, instead of just hitting that GitHub repository that I found that holds all the emojis that are defined by Unicode, apparently, we'll be getting those emojis from the database, which will make things like picking the emoji of the day and saving it and retrieving it fast much easier, and will also allow us to do cool things like aggregate some data or quickly filter some emoji categories. So from having this project out live, I found that usually you'd get like a flag, and that's a bit boring. Every flag, every country has its own culture. Every country is interesting. But if you are in the Emoji of the Day app, I don't think you want to see like, oh, today the Emoji of the Day is like Greece. I can tell you a lot about Greece. I can tell you all about where I grew up as well. But, not the thing you're necessarily looking into when you go into a random emoji of the day app. And also, thanks to discussion in the Discord, I was asked to maybe APIs with SvelteKit, and that made me think that maybe we could also have this app expose its own API for other people to use, because I haven't found any good just give me a random emoji app out there. I haven't found any APIs like that. So maybe we can make one, and we can allow for some filters, like actually do pick from every emoji that exists, or only from emojis in these categories, or only an emoji in the flag category because you're doing something related with countries, for example. So that'd be cool to do, and that's how we start today. Then we'll do the Cloudflare D1, the SQLite solution. And hello Framer Gaming, how are you doing? And what are you playing recently? Recently I've been playing Citizen Sleeper 2, which which is quite good for a nerd like me, which who listens to like podcasts that kind of have this sort of approach where you roll a dice and then you may get like the positive outcome or the neutral outcome or the bad outcome, and then the story continues. It's quite fun. So let me know what you're playing as well. Right, so that's about it for the preamble rambling. We can move into creating our backend API endpoint. And shout out as well, this time in the description, I'm not linking to the Svelte and SvelteKit docs. I'm linking to the Svelte and SvelteKit tutorial, which has been upgraded relatively recently to include stuff such as basic and advanced SvelteKit. In the basic SvelteKit section, it has a section on API routes in Get handlers. So if you haven't played with the Svelte and SvelteKit tutorial recently, give it a try. It is overwhelmingly big. It's so many things to go through, but often I do find that if I'm stuck at something, or if someone else asks a question in the Discord and they are stuck with something, there will be a relevant section in the Svelte wizard where I can point them to, and then they'll manage to fulfill the steps that they give you on the left, and kind of understand the concept a bit better than just reading some docs about it. The tutorial nowadays is using the stack blitz approach, where you do actually have not just a REPL, you have something that is actually able to have multiple files in a real SvelteKit project and kind of run and deploy them right on your browser window, which is quite amazing, quite magical, if I may say so myself. So it used to be you could only have a Svelte tutorial, let's say, because you were only limited in doing things in one file, or maybe just front-end files as Svelte components. But now, the way it's built now, you can have plain TypeScript files, files for just your API endpoints, and give it a go. It's nice. Hello, Orshin. How are Nico? You got me again. Hello, Nico. How are you doing today? Right. We won't go through the wizard. You should probably go through the wizard whenever you are stuck at something, just a small section that seems familiar or similar to what you're trying to look into. Go through it, and then once you're bored, or once you think you can apply it to a real project, the thing you really want to do, then go over there, keep going with your own stuff. If you get stuck again, then find a relevant section in the tutorial, go back, because going through all of it, as good as it is overwhelming. It is a bit much. So I wanted to sort that out. What we want is, instead, in our main page, in our home route, we have a server load method that is using our dependency injection model to get a random emoji. And what we do here behind the scenes is we hit the emoji project. What is it called? Let's have a look. There is this Emoji Toolkit public repo, which has a couple JSON files that apparently do get updated when Unicode updates and adds more instructions and more emojis. And we're fetching that file, we're getting a random emoji from there. That's great. We do want to store this in our database in order to do more efficient stuff and filtering. Even though this is a public project, GitHub may rate limit us if we were to hit it again and again. So that's one of the reasons you may want to switch to your own storage solution for all the emojis. And of course, you could do things like never pick this emoji, don't include it. Include images for every emoji or something like that. You can do cooler stuff if you own the data. And maybe it's a bit of a bit nicer. I don't know. Instead of these people are maintaining this amazing project and then you're just consuming it and that's it. I don't know. It does work for now, but we will migrate to that. But what I also want, instead of this homepage to be giving us some UI for this, I do want other people to be able to hit the app and say, you know, app /API emojis random or something like that, and then they get a random emoji programmatically to use in their own app, in their own solution. Why not? So that's the first thing that we'll do today. API endpoints, and I guess in the agenda here, we'll try to implement this /API /emojis. Give me the list of all the emojis in the word. We get a not found because we haven't defined that route. If it was a UI route, we'd go to source routes and then try to reflect the path that the user needs to put in to get there. So /API emojis. We've done this quite a few times, and create a, for example, +page.svelte5 here for the UI, and immediately this will resolve and we'll be able to add our UI and do our own stuff there. But that's not what we want. What we want is a server API endpoint. And the way you do that with SvelteKit, can I do it live without even looking at the docs? Is you define a plus server. So all the magic files, the magically named files in SvelteKit do have the plus sign as the start, as the prefix. So there is to identify. There are opinions about whether it is nice to have the same file in different directories, or not. Some people don't like that, but I've grown to like it. It's just an opinion, man. So plus server.ts, and it needs to be exporting a relevant method. Now we want a get API endpoint. The HTTP verb that we want for this endpoint is get. When you don't do mutations, you just decrease, then it's a get verb. And in order to fulfill that, we need to export a get function. So name of the verb, of the HTTP verb, is what you need to export. If you were exporting, if you did want to handle a post method for mutations, that's what you do. We want a get. And my autocomplete is suggesting return a hello world with application JSON headers. So let's return that and see what happens. All right, it just works. So indeed, you export the magically named method, uppercase letters get nowadays in modern SvelteKit. Don't change that. And then all you need to do is return a response. So if you go to the MDN docs, you can read all about the response API. One of the things that I like about SvelteKit and other modern frameworks is that they try to reuse things that are web standards. So of course, the SvelteKit thing is like, oh, you export a get method and that's how it magically works. But at least it's exporting a method named after the HTTP verb. And what you return from it is a response. This is a standard thing. So that's nice. And we are tying some JSON. You could return anything from this. You could return a streaming response. All very modern, very cool stuff. SvelteKit does have helper methods as well to help you get through this. So if you just want to return JSON, there is the JSON method where you can just import from SvelteKit and return this JSON. Behind the scenes, this is really doing what GitHub Copilot suggested. I am in the preview period of where they're trying to do VS Code be more like Cursor, I suppose. First time I'm trying it really, even outside of the stream. I don't like how it is suggesting like, you know, prettier styling differences. Like, why semicolons? You should know better. Anyway, we have a get endpoint already, but what we want from this endpoint, we said, is we want to return all the emoji. We often do my poor man's dependency injection, where I have a dependency injection handle. SvelteKit has this concept of a hooks file, which every request looks for a hooks file that exports a handle, which can actually be a sequence of handles, and runs through it. I do my dependency injection there, in which I decide that this app is going to have an emojis repository, and in this case, the emojis repository interface is going to be fulfilled by the emoji API that I showed, like on GitHub, by the Emoji Toolkit emoji API. This will make it easier later when we do have a database to just switch the repository to be the emojis DB repo, for example. I find that saves me time, and by designing the interface, very often my thoughts get in order and I have more sensible code, and where sensible, I mean it makes more sense in my head. Hopefully in yours as well, but if not, try something different. It's easy with dependency injection. Anyway, what we do in this handle is that in the locals, we put in the emojis repo. So all we need to return here, really, we can just do a separate line just to make it easier. The emojis repo, we have a get all method, and then we just want to return that as JSON, even that straightforward array of things. So if we hit that endpoint again, we get all the emojis in the word, all stolen, well, not stolen, borrowed, inspired by that other API repo. Cool. That's it for our first get endpoint. let's do the same thing and reinforce our landings by having our request get, by creating another get API endpoint to get a random emoji. We'll fly through this one. So if the user goes to /API emojis, or if they do a fetch request there, they get all the emojis in the word. We want an API endpoint to get a random emojis, a random emoji, and maybe just emojis random is what we want. As the endpoint 404, yet again, what do we need to do? We need to reflect the path in our directory structure in the SvelteKit project inside the roots directory. So what we want again is a folder structure like inside routes, you have API, you have emojis, and you have random now. And then in there, you want a +server.ts file that exports a GET request. And at that point, we can just copy paste. You know, if you know what you're doing, copy pasting is fine. If the user hits this again, then they'll get all the emoji, but that's not what we want to return here. We want to return just a random emoji. So from our emojis repo, we'll run the random method here and just return that random emoji. So each time we get there, we should get a different one. So now we got the supervillain one, cool one. Refresh again, we got the hospital one, cool. And here is where maybe in the future we can extend this endpoint to actually take parameters and say, all right, we want a random emoji, but we only want something in the travel category. How do we do that? We probably use query parameters. So maybe we can do like categories equals, and then you can have the search parameter, the category there. You can have multiple of the same name of query parameters. So there you can say travel, and you can say also categories, whatever. Is smiles a category? Probably not. Is people a category? Food is definitely a category. So you can do it like that. But that's something that I'll think about, whether you want something like that. Sometimes people like having a format like one query parameter and then you JSON parse it, like you parse the array. Not really an HTTP standard of how our HTTPIs work, but it's a standard in the industry that people just do it. So you'd know that you'd give an array of a comma separated things, a list of things here, and you'd need your API, your backend, to parse it accordingly. Or in this case, would you want to have like an omit category something, because you predict that people will want most emojis but skip like the flags category, the countries category? I don't know. Something to think about in the future. For now, we just want this random API endpoint to work, and it does something cool with SvelteKit. So they have a separate section for this. Maybe we are using this dependency injection situation to easily fulfill the getting the random emoji of the day here. So in our load method in the route, we hit our own emojis repo. We use our own emojis repo from the locals. Another way to do this is to do an internal fetch request to our own API endpoint in SvelteKit. And SvelteKit provides its own fetch for this because it does have, it does do its own magic behind the scenes. Usually, like the normal fetch on the backend, on Node or on Ban or wherever, you always need to use it with absolute URLs like https emoji.com/API emojis random. But the SvelteKit fetch that you get in every backend method, actually, if it sees a relative URL, it knows to resolve it within the project, and therefore it won't actually do an API request here. What it will do is go look at the API emojis random directory, essentially, look at the get method you're running here, and just run the method. So no fetch request, actually, no backend to backend fetch request, HTTP request. What SvelteKit will do behind the scenes is just run this method for you with all the parameters according to how you've called your fetch method here. So that's a bit magic, but that's kind of cool. Makes things faster because you don't have the extra HTTP request here. So now, yet again, we'll return the emoji of the day. But the difference is how it doesn't work. And we need to figure out why. Of course, because this is a fetch call, this will be JSON. So you're losing a bit of type safety. I know that there are some SvelteKit wizards that kind of understand how they can do this a bit better, how to type this a bit more dynamically, but that's not me. So eventually that should work, right? So this is it's as if you were doing an HTTP fetch request, get request. So it is an HTTP response which you'd need to parse as JSON, and then you can use it. And you lose the type safety here. So what I actually do is that since this is my own API, I can say that actually this is like an emoji from the interface that I've created here. I wish there was an easier way to type this, and there probably is. There must be a way to be doing like something like infer magic TypeScript, infer type of return value, get whatever, but I don't know it. If you do know it, let me know, maybe share in the Discord. But for now, what I am making heavy use of is having an interface of things, and I know that this random API endpoint is returning JSON of the emoji that looks like this. And therefore, when I hit it in the load method for the home page, then I know, all right, I fetch this internal endpoint, and then I'll get as JSON this emoji again. TypeScript, I love when there are other tools in the way that do the typing for me. The more you introduce the human element, me, the more likely I am to do a mistake at typing things. So I like when things work with magic. So I'm not super keen on this. That's why maybe usually I do like the approach where I have the repos in the locals and use them directly. But if, for example, you also wanted to have an iOS app that is making use of the API endpoint, then, just be consistent, expose this endpoint, use it internally. We've done a live stream about the many ways to fetch data in SvelteKit, and have a look at that one for the drawbacks of that approach. But the moment you have two different apps needing the same things, then it starts making sense to have an API endpoint like this, whether you do it in SvelteKit itself or have a dedicated endpoint with like Hono.js or something like that. An example of SvelteKit typing things for me, and it's awesome, is that the load method here is passing the emoji as data to the front end, and SvelteKit will magically type for me that, oh, the data is based from what you're returning here in the object. So I do know that in data, I do have the emoji, which is an emoji. That's great. That's awesome. That's how I want to work with TypeScript. The problem is that in this case, I have to tell it that this emoji is actually typed like this. It won't figure it out from the return method of this internal get request for now. maybe there are cleverer people. Well, there are tons of cleverer people than I, but maybe some of them are even working on this, on how to make this magic fetch, this magic svelte fetch, be able to infer what this response is based on the get request that you've defined here. I don't know. Something to look forward in the future. Anyway, the frontend now is using the internal API endpoint here. So there are two ways where if we actually switch how we get all the emojis and the random emoji, the frontend here doesn't need to change anything. We won't need to change any of this code later on. What we need to change is either our implementation of the emojis repo interface and or this part. I guess this part we won't need to change. In the dependency injection handle, like in one line, we will change this to be the emojis DB repo, and then we'll be using our database and everything will be nice in the Word. So let's actually make a commit here. So if it does work as advertised, we'll gloat. All right, so done and done. It's database time. What I've used in the past was Heroku, which does keep getting more and more expensive for no reason. Heroku Postgres. Then in 2023, I switched to Supabase, which is great, amazing for many projects, especially projects that need real-time solutions in a kind of easy way and sensibly priced. You get a couple of free projects, for example, but since I do like random projects for every live stream, then I can't just keep using Supabase forever. And I am paying Supabase for quite a few projects. Anyway, so let's minimize that. Let's save some money. Another fun thing that I often hear is that companies are very keen to spend like 100K in developer salaries to replatform to solve like a 90K problem. So sometimes you pay 90K to Supabase, and that's good, because to create your own solution, then you'd need to pay a lot of money and eventually keep paying 100K in salaries to maintain your other custom solution. So that's because something costs money. It's not necessarily bad. But for this thing, definitely switching to Cloudflare D1 is going to be cheaper because it's going to be free for our process. We don't need any real-time subscriptions to like the emojis thing if people are upvoting or downvoting or whatever. So why not use Cloudflare D1, which is the SQLite solution that Cloudflare provides. Cloudflare provides tons of things, many of them I'll never use. A lot of them I'm starting to use more and more, and I really like them. The cool thing with Cloudflare D1 is that they will cleverly and automatically distribute it across the world, like they distribute your website, like the built output of our SvelteKit app. It will be served by servers near to the user requesting your emoji of whatever, your app. And Cloudflare D1, the database, will also be close to the user. So the backend to backend request to fetch things from the database will also have low latency. And they're doing a few things where it will actually be in the same container. So it's going to be like a file read, so zero latency stuff on the backend there. And the free tier is pretty generous. Does it have any problems? Not really. I do like Turso as well. I do find that Turso is quite efficient, and it's a type of thing where I cannot use it on the free tier because the databases go to sleep, and that's just not good enough for production. But because I have so many, I am just on one of their medium tiers, and I have like 1 million databases or 1,000 databases, which is effectively 1 million different ones for staging and production and whatever. And I'll never run out of databases. So more sensible than Supabase, for example, which for every new project you need to pay at least 10 euros extra, and it gets out of hand. Anyway, we have shown how to set up Cloudflare with SvelteKit. Lots of people in the Discord have had help from me on how to do things. Since the Cloudflare UI has changed and it's even harder to find where your project is and how to attach things on your app. But if you go to your Cloudflare account, there is a storage and databases section, which you can use, and go to your D1 SQLite database. And there you can create your new database, whatever. I've created offline because it's just, busy work. I've created one for the Emoji of the Day app. And then you can go to your projects and attach any database that you want to that project. Make it available in the environment of that application. Where are your applications nowadays? They've changed it a little bit. If you go to compute, then you'll find them. And indeed, I can find the Emoji of the Day app there. And there, if you go to the integration section, if you go to the settings section, you can find the bindings section there. And there you're able to add any of the things that you've set up in other parts of the Cloudflare project. So it's there that I've selected a D1 database. I've named how I want it available in the environment of the app. So I've attached the emoji of D1 database to the app with the name DB, and then manually, since I am using TypeScript, for SvelteKit to be able to help me in our Svelte config, we are using the adapter Cloudflare, which magically adds some things in the environment, knows to look for some things in the environment, according to what you add in the platform object here. And when you're using Cloudflare, you can follow the instructions and find that actually the platform object specify an env, and then it's going to be the name that you use to attach the D1 database or the key value store or whatever else you want. And then in your hooks files, your server endpoints, your server load methods and all that stuff, your env object and the DB will be available for you to be auto-completed and have confidence that it actually works. You can also go to your Wrangler configuration here and specify that I want to bind as DB the emoji of database, which has this ID, and then we specify a migrations directory, which we'll show later with Drizzle. But as far as I understand, this is needed for the development server to be able to emulate this locally. But for production, you don't actually need that Wrangler config. So if you don't have it, it's going to be fine if you went to the UI to manually bind this here. But because you will want to test things locally, definitely define this. You can find database ID and stuff in various sections of the Cloudflare website, which keeps changing. Well, it doesn't keep changing. I hadn't seen it change for like a year or 2 years, and now that it changed, it's like, whoa. Anyway, all of this means that now we're stuck in Greek. In our dependency injection handle, it's just gonna be uppercase or Greek. Happens sometimes. Right. So, according to our app.d.ts, SvelteKit knows that in the event, in the platform, in the env object, we have a DB thing, which is a D1 database. And I am passing this to create a client that's going to be a Drizzle database. Things that we've shown in a previous live stream. Drizzle is an ORM that I really like. I use in many projects. Works amazing with Torso. Works okay with Cloudflare D1. Let's see, we'll use it more now. They do have a separate driver for Cloudflare D1. And we're creating the client like this just to be able to pass it around the repos that I add to the dependency index will handle. Some people don't do this and they just create the client in different ways, but that's the way that I like it. Anyway, what we want is an Emojis DB repo implementation. And if I look at my chapters here, yeah, overview done. So let's create a schema because the database that we have currently has no tables. I could get in here in the UI and manually create some tables here, but especially if you work with teams, just having like the guy that is running in the UI, the schemas and the migrations, that's a bit squirrely. So I do like using something like Drizzle or Knex, something that will create an SQL statement that people can review, can see, and they'll be able to recreate. Hello in the chat. How are you doing today? Yeah, so you can create the tables in the UI, but let's use Drizzle to define the schemas and create the tables and move on with our lives. There are a couple ways to define schemas with Drizzle. What I like is specifying a directory that is scanned for schemas in potentially different files. So I like having a auth.ts schema that actually has all the tables needed for authentication. So the users table, the one-time passwords table, the providers table, all of those things, they stay in one file, and then I know everything I need for auth is here, instead of having separate files like users.ts and one-time passwords.ts or whatever. But still, so I don't like having one file per table, but the first thing they saw in Drizzle is just having one file for everything. So your schema is in just one file, which I think is just too much. Maybe for a simple app like this, which may not even have a users table, like any authentication logic, and just, one table, then it could be fine to have everything in one file. But I like the flexibility and consistency of having the schemas logically grouped according to the domain, I suppose. If I try to call it in more principal engineer sounding terms. But if I were to say it with this confidence, I don't know, I'd get throwback. Anyway, so in source lib server db.schema, this is a directory that has all my schema files, is what I'm claiming here. Server db schema, this has nothing, so let's create an emojis.ts and go to the Drizzle docs and see what are the SQLite ways to define some tables here. Search schema for SQLite. A users table here, a post table. Sounds about right. This is SQLite. Oh, interesting. So let's just copy this users thingy and see what we can steal. Don't know if I'll use this. We want an emojis table. And let's see, according to our emojis repo interface, an emoji should have a code, which could be its ID. That's the Unicode code. Has a name, like the human readable name. And let's have a look actually at the Unicode. from Unicode themselves. So it has the Unicode code. It has a sort name, I guess. And we know from Emoji Toolkit that it also has the sort name indeed. That's if you go to Discord and Slack and GitHub, you will see that in the messaging functionality, if you start with a colon, then it will keep scanning for emojis that match this. And for many emojis, there are alternates where it's not, I don't remember. So maybe the tada one, that's like kind of like confetti. I think it has a few different names. For example, is there like tada? Oh, there you go. So tada is the official name. I was right. But it has a few alternate ones. One alternate one that's like party popper, and it also has keywords here like celebration, party, popper, tada, and UC6 for the Unicode, I guess. Interesting. Anyway, we may do this functionality like a search functionality as well in the future. Who knows? Why did GitHub crash? What are you doing, Chrome? But the point is that maybe we don't want an ID column. Maybe we want the primary column to be called code. And it will definitely be a text field that is going to be the primary key and no auto increment. It's not an indicator. What else do we want? Let's open it maybe sideways here. We want to have a name which will be text, not null, not the primary key. Name. So category, we could have a separate table for categories, but maybe that's a bit much. Oh, and here we should specify what they're called, right? Column names. Category. Not null, they all belong in a category. Then we want an array of strings and an array of keywords, which is interesting. Let's see how you do arrays in SQLite with Drizzle. I guess you'd use the JSON column. Nothing about array. So I think if we use a text column with the mode of JSON, we will be fine. They also have the blob, but that's not what we want. Let's see, and if we can define it here. So, sort names. Where do you specify the column name? Surely it's like the first parameter, no? Don't specify the column names here. Interesting. Is it like if you don't need to camel case them, then you're fine? I guess so. So let's see. They also call the table users underscore table, which I don't know about this, man. Let's just have a look at this method. All right, so you can pass the name and then you can optionally pass the config. It's one of the ways to use it. And the overall load says that you can optionally give a config. So I guess it will magically figure it out based on this. But if you want to be sure that you're using like only lowercase characters or whatever, maybe you can specify the name. So I keep forgetting to specify something though, so maybe I will just let it be. We can see what happens. Right, so sort names is this, and I want nothing else. But I want the type to be just an array of strings, just a string array. That should work. And same for keywords, just an array of strings. And what else would we want? So maybe we want like an inserted at or created at or whatever timestamp column, in which case I will look at other projects that I've done because I always forget how to do timestamps. With a default value is my problem. So they're claiming that I can use this SQL method here. Great, that's not what I've used before. Looks great. So let's do that. So how will it, this is where you'd specify like the name here, because maybe you want this column to be like created at with an underscore. I don't know, but maybe you don't care, maybe you'll just let it be like that. Not sure, something's telling me this is not cool, but hey, anyway, let's specify this. Will I forget? I'm not sure. Let's bring in the SQL method here. And apparently, it will see the SQL. It will default to the current timestamp there. Should be fine. Should be fine. We don't want an index there, but we may want an index on the category, for example, because we may be filtering by category, or like show me everything from this category. The problem is that I think they've recently updated the way you do indexes. Indices. I think it's good. Oh well. Guess not. Right, so we have the emojis table, we have a code, we have a name, We have a category, sort names, keywords, created at, and let's have a boolean for hidden, because I want like some cancelled emojis as well. So let's look at SQLite column types. Do they just have? So an integer column can have a boolean mode. So hidden. Apparently it doesn't like it. Ah, of course we need t dot something. Sure. And default false. And that's about it. So are these, it should always have a sort name. Where would I specify this? Maybe here. Keywords maybe doesn't have, that's fine. And guess we could default it to empty array. But I think that's about it. Schema defined. And this should be the emojis table. Dear Lord, what a mistake. But now we should be able to tell Drizzle to create a migration based on the schema that we have here. So let's do that. From the previous episodes, we have created a db generate migrations file, which is using Drizzle Kit to generate migrations according to what the difference is from the database it's looking into and what you've defined in your schema files. So in the Drizzle config, we can have a look again. That I think you don't need database credentials to be able to run the migration function. This is only if you want to run Drizzle Studio. But I guess, are we claiming that it will magically find the SQLite database? Probably not. Unclear. But I guess we'll find out. Let's see. So last time I tried it, this worked. Thanks to the help of the community as well. Let's see. So if we npm db generate migrations from the correct directory, we're in a monorepo. So if we go to apps web, which is our SvelteKit app, and we run it there, all right, so it couldn't find a Drizzle meta journal, which may be fine. Maybe not. Do we need to initialize this? Row. So it is looking into this directory, but we don't have a journal here, which should be fine, shouldn't it? Do we need like an init? Yeah, this is just about generated migrations, which is fine. Right in the config, there is no journal JSON great. At that point, it should just initialize the database, right? I don't want to pull the database schema like this. I just want to generate the migrations. My .env does have a few files. Maybe they're looking at the production database, but maybe not. So let's have a look at this code. Am I doing like anything different there? In that app, which probably worked, generated migrations does work now. We have the Drizzle config, which looks the same. Database credentials, it's not saying it's missing them. They do have a .env. In the Drizzle directory, we do have the journal, I suppose, that is saying that, oh, we've run the one migration that we generated. Which makes sense. But does it just need a Drizzle file, a journal file for the initial setup? We should just be creating an SQL file, so what's the problem? Clear. I'd imagine that it creates a meta directory by itself. Is it that I have the meta directory and it has nothing in it? Looks like it's the correct level. Let's delete Drizzle meta for now. Maybe that's a problem. All right. So the directory was there, but it didn't have the files it expected. That's why it was failing out. It needs to create everything by itself or else it flips out. Oh, Johnny. All right. So according to the config you've specified, but without creating any directories yourself, you should run this command for the very first time, and it will create an SQL file that you should review. It will also create a journal file, which I am running prettier on, just for consistency after creation. But this is the thing that we want to see. The emojis table is created. Great. It's creating the code, which some people will call primary, like ID. But you don't. It's not magic. ID is not a magic column name, so you can use anything. Then we have the emoji name, not null, category, not null, sort names, not null. Like almost everything is a text column, because we're using SQLite, which doesn't have all the various handy columns like Postgres does, except an indicator column that we're using for the hidden attribute, which we actually want to use as a boolean. So we're kind of hacking away with SQLite here, but it's kind of fun. And we're creating an index on categories, and I guess on hidden as well. So let's run it again. Glorious Whiplash was a nice name. Let's see if we have like a Drizzle directory and we run it again. Will it fail? No. All right. So the name we got now was Sparkling Fords. Even better. We're winning. But I forgot to say we actually want to have another index on hidden. So now I need to do it again. And hope we get another sick name. Prettier says that's good enough. Sure. All right, so let's delete these guys again. Third time's a charm. What name did we get? Tired Strong Guy. I feel seen. Right, so migrations are created. If we were trying to fetch data from our emojis table, it wouldn't work because the migration is created, but the database hasn't been migrated yet. We have a separate command for that. So the production one still will have no tables, and the one that SvelteKit is emulating for us locally also doesn't quite work. But let's move to doing that. Let's see if we have like a separate agenda item here. So just to remember this bug that we kind of stumbled with. And then all right, so what do we want here? What we want is, in our dependency injection handle, to start using our emojis database repo. So let's have a look at that one. Maybe copy paste it and say that actually we want an emojis DB repo thingy here. And we do want to call it emojis DB repo. And we want a get all method that instead of fetching all emojis from like a different place, it is looking through our database and doing a select query to fetch all of them. And we'll refactor the random way later. So let's look at the select statement. We want a basic select. We want a parcel select. Oh, it's even running like a cool method here. Anyway, let's just do like a select. So get all, instead of doing all of these things, and we really are returning every emoji, all the info. Interesting. From the emojis table, what's DB? So we want to have a DB client here. So this will have a dependency of DB, which will be something that we've typed before. In the place where we have our create client method. It creates a client and it returns a Drizzle database client on looking at a Cloudflare D1 database. So this has a dependency to this. And we can create a constructor that takes a DB client and then it does Copilot. Good. And in our getAll method, we can actually use this DB, select all the emojis, or just return them. Oh, interesting. I'd say that keywords may be null. All right. There's an maybe sometimes I don't have keywords, so let's just say like no or whatever. And then it's going to be happy. And then that means that if we go to our dependency injection handle and say that our emojis repo is now the emojis DB repo and give it the client, then it's going to be happy. And in our app.d.ts, if you don't want to change like 2 files to make this work, then you can have this be referencing the interface, and then no matter what you're choosing, it's fine. But I find that if you do actually take the effort to specify your specific implementation, then when you're using it from the locals, you can just command click and go to the specific implementation instead of the interface, which I think is a bit handier. In some projects, I don't do it like that, but I find it a bit handier. Right, so in the dependency injection handle, we just change this, and our emojis repo is the database repo, which means when we refresh now, we're going to get an error for a couple of reasons. One of them is that we're trying to select stuff from a table that doesn't exist. If we run our migration method, that table will exist. So that's going to be step 1. So in our packagation, we do have a command for this. We have a db migrate, which will use Wrangler. There are 2 ways to do this. So we won't actually be using Drizzle to apply the migration. Drizzle generates the migration, puts it in the Drizzle folder or wherever you specify. And then we're using Wrangle, the Cloudflare thing that we have installed as a CLI and as a dependency here in our project, to apply any migrations that are in this directory. And if my calculations are correct, because the SvelteKit server is running and we're passing the local flag, it will hit the emulated local DB binded SQLite D1 database. Let's see if it works. Must have worked before. That's why I have it like this. All right. So it will try to apply this. Great. It's not saying it's a local database, but you see, like, you passed in this flag, so you can see it here. And while you apply the migration, maybe it doesn't work. It says here, executing on local database, this one. It finds it from the .wrangler directory that running the SvelteKit dev server is creating for us. And it says it's all good. So if we refresh now, we should get a different problem. In that, did we get the same problem? Hard to say anymore. I see that there is like no such table, but now there should be a table. But the problem is that we have nothing in that local table. We can double check this because we also have DrizzleKit Studio, so we can have like a cute UI to check the state of our local database as well. So let's run this, have a look. And I don't actually like the kinda nice UI that they have. It's better than nothing, but it's not great. One of the things is no items in the database. What does that mean? Are there really no tables? Is it because we're looking at the production one yet again? I guess so. I guess so. So how do we look at the local one? Anyway, problem for another day. I claim that the migrations have run against the local database here. So what do we need? We need to add items to that database. Right? Let's do a classic console table thing. So in our DB repo here, we're returning this. We're getting all of the emojis. Let's console table the emojis here. When we request a random one here, indeed, we do get an array back. It just has no emojis. That's our problem. So let's put some emojis in there, which is a different chapter for today's episode of Live Coding and Chill. And I claim I will do it to using an internal API endpoint. So let's do it. Oh, let's add some things to the farm. No one has been doing anything. Planting break and coffee break. Corn, definitely more corn. Cool. Maybe let's convert a few more and open this one too. All right. Now we get to work as well. So this time we'll create a post API endpoint, and the idea is that when we hit it, we'll hit the GitHub repository, the public GitHub repository again, and insert or upsert or sync all the emojis that we have in the database. There are a few ways to do it. Like we could also say get all, but if this is an empty array, then sync with the emoji, the API repository. But then how would we sync when Unicode adds like 20 more emojis like next year or whatever? So it makes sense to have it be an API endpoint that we can run like every month or something on a schedule. The way we'll go about it is similar to how we created our other endpoints. So like a random endpoint, let's say that we'll have like a sync endpoint. And in here, this time we want to be a post endpoint for some reason, because it generates a mutation. And the moment we do this, if we make a post request there, then it's going to be handled by this handler, the post handler. If we make a request to localhost or the public one, API emojis sync server, then it's gonna run. It's gonna execute this handler. And what we want is to get all the emojis from the database, from the GitHub repository, and add them to our database if we don't have them already. So maybe in our app.b.ts, in our emojis repo interface, we can have a method that is called insert. And it takes an array of emojis. And returns nothing. Maybe it returns a count of how many were inserted, like number. But hey, it's creeping. And our API repo, I don't want to use it like that anymore. I want it to be just a handler, really, that gets all the emojis. So I don't want it to be implemented an interface. Maybe I just want this to be a file that says get fetch all emojis from Emoji Toolkit. What a name. And all it's doing is this part, but inside a method that we export. Cool, but the emoji URL I forgot. it is trying to help me. However, that wasn't the emoji URL that we were looking for. We can look at this file to remember what it was. Plonk. And then we get all of these things nicely mapped. Great, awesome. And then our Emojis DB repo can implement the insert method, which takes this and returns a number of emojis. Let's look at how you can do insert queries with Drizzle. And then we can see how we can do a count as well. Can do like a returning, I guess. Can you insert multiple rows? Yes. Can that do returning? Probably. So, this DB insert to the emojis table an array of values, the emojis. Or whatever. So you're given emojis, you get these guys. Insert to the emojis table. New emojis, call it something like that. Returning its code, I guess. Inserted rows will be this. And then you can just return the length, I guess. what you inserted. If we really want to do that. So in the emojis table, we insert all the new emojis we were given, and then we return this thing. And in our sync method, fetch all emojis from Emoji Toolkit. We can actually drag and drop it, I guess. Copy and paste it to this sync method. Could be in lib or wherever. It's just a fetch request after all. Yeah, just put it in lib. Let's put it here. Maybe we'll need it again. I don't know. Nah, I disagree. Like, we'll only use it here for now. If we need to put it elsewhere, we can put it elsewhere. This will be gotten from $lib. Good. In our sync method, Emoji Toolkit emojis, await, that's all emojis from Emoji Toolkit, great. And then we want to sync this. It's not sync, it's called insert. And then we can just return this. Good. Why do I keep adding like a T on insert and saying inserted? Mystery. Right. So we could do something where we always try to insert like 1,000 emojis, and then we do on conflict actually upsert, update some information, whatever, or just ignore it on conflict. If because they need to have unique IDs, the code we've specified, it's a primary key that has to be unique. So if we try to reinsert something that exists, it will error, and we can say if it errors, if it conflicts, then just do nothing. But maybe that's an inefficient way to do it. So maybe instead I can get all emojis there from the database. I call it DB emojis. And we can run this in parallel. It's a micro optimization. My hands are a bit cold, which means I'm doing more spelling mistakes. And then maybe we can ask like Copilot for an efficient way to only keep the ones that are not already in the database. I don't want to do like 2 loops. So maybe mapping this into a record and then or mapping the DB emojis into a record, and then you can quickly check if you have the code. So yeah, what it's doing here is the easiest way to do it, but it's inefficient because you're doing a loop within a loop. You go through all of the Emoji Toolkit emojis and filter them. If at least one of them has the same code, then you don't include it, and then you just put in the other ones, which, you know, not amazing. So if we went through the effort to just say db emojis map equals this, and then we do this, that's still gonna be like two loops, but it's not gonna be the second loop happening inside the first loop. So it's gonna happen as many emojis as there exist. So 1,000 times, 1,000 to 1,000. One way to do it. So I claim that the moment we hit this endpoint, which we can do with a curl request, it's gonna add all the emojis to our local database. And therefore, this is gonna work. Yeah? So maybe let's ask Copilot as well for the curl. API emojis sync. Let's see. Seems like a prime thing to ask a LLM to figure out. Many people do it. It's does X and then you put in the verb, but I always forget. And not Drizzle Studio. Let's see. This should. So what was the problem? Statement too long, too many emojis. Okay, fair enough. Another reason to not try to do all of them. So yeah, we do get every emoji in the word, but we need to batch this. Let's see if Copilot actually will help with this. You modify the code. Let's see if we like it. So info inserted, whatever. Copilot is flipping out for some reason. think it's fine. Copilot's flipping out, but I think it's fine. All right, so let's try again. Too many variables. Jesus. Let's do 10. All right. It's at 3,820 emojis. And if we run it again, we should insert 0. Perfect. So now, this should just work refreshing. There you go. Put this guy again. And each time we get a different one. Well, yes, sometimes we'll get the same one. Sweet. And what more do we want? We want to make the random thing more efficient. Instead of getting all of them and then choosing a random one, you can do this in an SQL query. Surely you can. Random. I do find that Copilot isn't the best with these, but we're using Claude, so maybe it's gonna be fine. Oh. Order by random. Do they have anything on the docs? I think it's just about creating like IDs or something. So it's claiming that SQLite has a random method. So there we go. Ah, and here's a cool error as well. So that's nice. So does it work again? Yes. Looks like it works. Looks like it's always random. And the cool thing with this is that instead of having all the bandwidth to ask our D1 database, fetch me all the rows and then do the array access for randomly getting one. Randomly getting one out of the array, fast operation. But getting all of this array for no reason, you shouldn't do that. So if we can get the random one from the database, it's great. We achieve this by ordering randomly and getting the first result. Cool. Does our UI actually need anything more? So from the emoji, it gets the code. So maybe it just needs like a couple of things. So let's look at our interface again. Maybe we just want the code and the name indeed. Not a real problem to return everything. But if you want to get a parcel one, like when you just get one row, that's fine. If you want a parcel thing, then on the select, you specify the columns that you want to bring in. These names can be anything. It will fetch things according to your schema. So you have the schema and you'll say, all right, bring the code from here. You can name this anything. but it does make sense. Most of the time, just name it the same thing. But the left side here, the object properties, the keys, object keys, aren't magic, can be anything. Drizzle will understand what to actually put in there in that key according to what you specify here. That's the value. Cool. So this still works. Anything else? Let's specify this. Trust that the interface will help us. Right. And thanks to what we've done before with our internal API methods thingies, the API endpoints that get all of the emojis should be using the same thing again. And I guess for this random one, maybe people will want the short codes. So yeah, we'll think about the API at some point in the future. Well, it's everything. And if we wanted to filter, it's not filtered, it's like where. We can say that in the where clause. I can say not equal, I guess. Where clause not equal. So if it's undefined or something, it should be fine. So if you wanted to exclude something, like you could say, oh, the category shouldn't be flags. Maybe we can do this immediately. There is a category for flags indeed. You can chain things in a where clause with the end helper. You can also say not equal, this category is not flags. So we'll always get something that's not a flag. We can add other categories and clauses there to make the emoji of the day thing more fun, but that's something to do in the future. What else? So we have this API endpoint to sync the database, but I need to run it manually. Let's schedule something to run it IRL on an interval. And then maybe we'll have time to do other stuff like creating a new table to say the picks of the day. So you can go through history and see what was the pick for like yesterday and the day before. And we can run some fun stats. But I do have a flight to catch to get me to Thailand. So maybe this is going to be the last thing that we'll do. So we've created this API endpoint that I can curl and hit and sync the database manually. But I want this to happen on a schedule because Unicode updates like once or twice a year. And I don't want to remember, like see the news that new emojis have been added and then run the command myself. I want something else to do it for me. And what I've been using has been GitHub Actions. So Cloudflare does have this thing called the Cloudflare triggers or Cloudflare scheduled triggers or Cloudflare cron triggers. Quite a few things there, but they're meant to work with their workers, which our SvelteKit app does build to, but there isn't an easy way to just say hit this endpoint from the SvelteKit app. You're supposed to define a worker, have it export like a scheduled method, and then whatever you do in this method is the thing that gets triggered on the cron schedule. It can be done with a SvelteKit project, but I just don't find it easy. I find it easier to specify GitHub action that has the scheduling thing here, and then have it run the request itself every so often. So let's ask Copilot, which I have found has been terrible at creating GitHub actions, which you'd think if it's one thing that it should be good at, it should be creating GitHub actions, like everything is Microsoft there. Anyway, let's see. Let's give it a chance. That runs. So what's the curl request we're talking about? But we wanted to run against production. And then we'll protect it. So in theory, when we deploy this app, since we are, sorry, the AI assistant, thought I said something else, but I said in theory. Hello Faranglo, long time no see. So we're giving GitHub Copilot a chance to create a GitHub action correctly. And that looks correct to me. Like every Sunday at midnight, sure. So GitHub workflows, call it Emojis sync.yaml. And I don't remember. I wouldn't be able to manually run write in cron. So I think that's a great time to use an LLM for this. Sunday at midnight, why not? Post request there. Great, looks easy enough. And what else would we need? Copilot claims that's all we need. Let's also secure it. Maybe we won't make it. So I don't want anyone to be able to hit this API and just run it all the time. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to make us bankrupt because we're not paying for this. But let's try to avoid malicious parties and do that. Let's say that we'll have like a cron API key. We'll be doing a similar thing for picking the emoji of the day as well. So Let's say let's bring in, let's put this in a different window. So I'll go into my .env.local. And based on my .env.test, I'll create a cron API key. Which means I can now go here, and this is still SvelteKit, so I can bring it in from static private burden JS thing. So this thing and let's see what Copilot suggests. There are a few ways to do this. You can have like a bearer token or something like that. Authentication header with a bearer token. That's what it suggests. Great. Cool. So that's the first thing we'll do here. So if a malicious party is trying to do something naughty there, we will fix it. If it's not matching, then we 401. Great. We don't have what to do. And that's it. So how do we add this header in a curly request on the terminal? If we run this again, we should get an error unauthorized. Great, awesome. And we add the dash header with the API key. Copy that. If it's incorrect, still want to do localhost. Right, let's do the previous one. Does add a header, authorization header. It's gonna be bearer does what, which should still fail. But if it actually matches the value I have in my .env, which is cron API key, it will work. Great. I will change this for production. How do we I suspect you just use curly's env secrets cron API key. But let's see, this is the thing that it never gets correct. It's in better now. Secrets cron API key, all right. Let's press the button to see if it updates it nicely. Did it? So this thing we haven't added, but we should. Here we go. I am correct. It is suggesting something that doesn't work. It's the same thing. What did we have before? So we had this. So it's claiming that the moment we do this, it flips out. It's the moment we do the curlies. All right, here we go. All right, so this parses knows that this doesn't exist in our GitHub project. Great. Let's go to this, where the workflow is going to run. Let's go to settings. Let's go to secrets and variables for actions. Let's create a new repository secret. Let's have it be this. And then give me something to run on the terminal and get a random API key. "64 characters." Is that enough? I guess it can be as long as you please. So yeah, let's do that, I suppose. Right. So I will need to do this off screen. If you allow that. I need to copy it. And then also equally off screen in here, I need to paste it. If you allow that. Save it. It's saved. You can see it's here. And then if I reload, it will know that it exists, but won't leak it when I highlight, which is nice. Let's run the script to update our database, our production database, because I think it's gonna just work. And then we can push and see what happens. We will take like a small break and I'll be right back. we're back. What I'm thinking is that there is one more thing. I think there is a way to manually be able to trigger workflows if you specify something in your GitHub Actions. And I know this because I have done it before, even if I don't remember what exactly the property is. So manually trigger let's specify that. And let's go to Copilot. Let's go to our emoji sync workflow and say, what do I need to specify? This workflow manually through the GitHub UI. Let's see. Workflow dispense. This key empty, kind of weird, but I guess it works. I guess manually we could do like the post requests themselves, but it's kind of fun to do it like that. So we're actually doing like a million things here. Let's say set up DB with all current emojis. Let's push this to production and see what happens. Anything else to double check? Have the Cloudflare dashboard. I did run db migrate prod on the terminal, but it claims there are no migrations to apply, which is kind of worrying, because I can see no table here and I am in the right database. Yeah, 0 tables. So clearly something's not working. Apps web migrate prod. Like, what's the difference? I'm seeing Wrangler D1 migration supply DB and it just ain't working. So what's that about? If I run the migrate method, it says no migrations to apply, which is fair enough. But if I don't pass the local thing, the local flag, then it should work. I will delete, stop the SvelteKit server and see if that helps any. No, it's the same thing. So how come the local migrations worked, but the non-local migrations didn't? Unclear. But do I just need to press like refresh or something? It's saying this, so I see like this UI that makes me feel like it is actually trying to check. That this is current. It's saying there are no tables. It's not like they've cast whether there are any tables or not. Wrangler, apply, migrations. Let's have a quick look. The migration system aims to be simple yet effective. Great. Good for you. But how do you do it? Do we need to say remote? By default, it's local. By default, it's local. So the remote flag, the local flag, you don't need. For a production flag, you actually do need. Fair enough. Let's return it again. db migrate prod. Ooh, they want me to authenticate with Cloudflare. Hello. Would you like to get hacked? Yes. Didn't quite work. I am logged in, so I will try this again. Hello. Great. Wrangler will be able to do things. Right, I'll switch this here for luck. We're seeing the same thing. It's gonna tell me I'm gonna apply this migration, and your database may not be available to serve requests according to what type of migration you're running. You madman or madwoman. This is how you do it on the remote. We're doing it on the remote one. You remove the remote flag, and then it's gonna work. So yeah, we don't need local flag here. It was the other way around. So now, if we look at the database, it should have tables. It has two tables, great. I imagine the migrations table for Drizzle, a Drizzle table, and the Emojis table. I guess if they have underscore, you cannot see them. The Emojis table should be empty, but let's look at our GitHub repo. Something failed. Interesting. Build failed. Cron API key. Yes, environment variable that I should be adding. Makes sense. So we did say we've added a cron API key. So we want another secret. Here that I will have to go off screen to do. And also use the terminal again. That SSL command. was it? OpenSSL rand hex 32 gives me a nice big value here. I can generate like a few. So even if I actually saw my terminal accidentally, it's gonna be fine. But even if I do, I can just change the keys here. Incorrect. This needs to be exactly the value that I've added in GitHub Actions, isn't it? So here in settings, I've added the value here. Secret and variable actions. Your own project. Try harder, Johnny. So it's the emoji off. I've already set it to something, but I need to update it to something else. So let's put it here. They need to match. However, I'm deploying to Cloudflare. Oh, I need to two-factor authentication. Super secure. But yeah, cool build failure. I don't want that endpoint to be unprotected. Now it should be fine. And the build should be fine. Everything should be great. I can do like a quick check for upgraded dependencies. Let's see if we have something. Update every dependency to latest. Is there anything new? Anything cool? I think the answer is no. Yeah, let's do an amend comment with that little change. So now I am claiming that. Hello, Mike. How are you doing? I am claiming that this push will trigger Cloudflare deployment that will work. Oh, interesting. So that was the thing to change. Do I need to specify this or does it work? I guess it's not gonna set a playtest or something. This needs to match with like this. Upgraded recently. So Mike saying deploying in Cloudflare is painful. They have this not compatibility flag that doesn't really work, which is what I found. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But depending on what you do, you may not need any node compat stuff. So we're not using the crypto API here, for example. So it just works. Does it? We'll find out. So yeah. So seeing the changes, it shouldn't matter. Our deployment should have succeeded. I guess if it does, our Emoji of the Day app should not be working. Great, internal error, that's what we expected. It's only because we don't have emojis in our database, is what I claim. So can we manually run this sync, thanks to the thing we've set up? And weekly emoji sync, we've added this attribute. It has a workflow dispatch event trigger, so we can run it manually. We can run it now. Let's run it now and see if it just works. No, Cloudflare works just fine. I've known a few Svelte people for like 3 or 4 years, and even earlier than the current resurgence of Cloudflare, even earlier than I started doing live streams on Cloudflare, they were saying, "Oh, Cloudflare is awesome," and it does work well with SvelteKit. Don't worry. If I make mistakes, it's a skill issue. All right, so we are running our database sync here. It should be doing an internal curl request or a curl request. Inserted 3820 emojis. Great. That means if we hit our page again, it should actually get an emoji back. And indeed, it does. There is some DNS thing in my server that makes this kind of annoying, but hey. It feels like we've set these things up. Getting emojis, we're never getting flags. It's hard to beat the ease of use for Vercel for sure. So it's not like, oh, you can't set up things in Cloudflare, but with Vercel, it does feel like, you know, connect to GitHub, bang, works. And hey, they have like the main Svelte person working for them, so it makes sense. The problems with Vercel is when you're trying to integrate with a database, for example. They have their Neon, then their Postgres via Neon. That kind of works, but I do think the limits there are so small. But they have to get you at some point. It's not just benevolent that they want everyone to use their services for free. Mostly, they get the big companies that have big users and they give them the big bills. So the small developers can get by for free. But if you want a few things that I think are standard, even for side projects and prototypes and stuff, with Vercel, you may need to pay for something. Cloudflare feels easier to get by on the cheap. Vercel domains, for example, definitely a big markup there if you want to buy a domain there. Cloudflare, it's more confusing to set up for sure, 100%, but it's as cheap as possible. All right, so emojis are there. We can get them as a list. Great. We can get a random one. In the future, let me know if you want me to show more stuff, like how to have this be a protected API where you have to cut a key, an API key, and then lots of services like that tell you, give me your email address, and then we give you a free API key, for example. Which is good because then you can easily identify the malicious third parties there. Cloudflare does have quite a lot of things as well that help you make public APIs, like automatic firewalling and bot protection and that sort of thing that I haven't experimented with, but I've heard good things and I'll want to have a look at in the future. So let me know if that's something that interests you as well. And we won't be storing the pics for now because I have a flight to catch. To, of all places, Thailand. Isn't that cool? Isn't that appropriate? So let's do the final demo and call it a stream. Trying to find my OBS here. Cool. So, what have we done today? You can go to emojioff.com and see something, if your DNS is working correctly. I don't know what's wrong with mine. And see the official emoji of the day. This is hosted by Cloudflare. It's a SvelteKit app that deploys to their pages/workers product for free. And the thing we've added this time is we're storing all emojis in our own database, Cloudflare D1, which is also on the free tier for our purposes. What we were doing in the previous episode is hitting the Emoji Toolkit project, GitHub repo by Zoe Pixels, which is super popular, super cool. They have a couple files that have every Unicode emoji there, and we're hitting their public repo to just get this list and get a random one from there. So what we are doing now is that we're using a scheduled GitHub action that will be running every Sunday, but we can also run manually. That does that request, and if an emoji isn't already in our database, adds it in there. So if in 6 months Unicode adds 20 more emojis, then we already have them and they are in the bucket. They're in the database, they can be selected as the random emoji of the day. So that's one of the cool things we've done. Have a look at like the workflow that we've created. We did ask GitHub Copilot to create it for us, and it had like one problem, but even though it feels, to me, it feels like for GitHub Action workflows, it should be 100% correct, better than I every time. It still had a little problem, but better than I thought. It managed to know how to get a secret from the repository. Pretty good. It knows the cron scheduling, how to make it run every week, which is something that, you know, no regular human, and not even I, slightly regular human, can understand what this is, what the cron scheduling is. I guess at some point it's like the day of the week, and then it's like the time of the day, and then it's like, I don't know. In any case, Copilot knows, and it specified the cron pattern. That means this is gonna sync every week. Next things, one of the next things that we'd like to do is have a daily cron that picks the emoji of the day, because now we're just leveraging caching, Cloudflare caching, to pick the emoji of the day. So if you hit it again and another person hits it, it's gonna serve the emoji that was selected for the other person. But ideally, we will want every pick of every day to be in our database. And I think, the other big thing we did was that we've introduced API endpoints. So in theory, other people can consume our emoji API in their own apps. So if you hit emojioff.com/APIs emojis random, they get the emoji, a random emoji every time, and maybe that's cool for them. Maybe they can use it in a different way. We can talk about how we can authenticate that endpoint with API keys as well, and how to pass in filters, like only choose emojis from a different category. We are also using this endpoint ourselves for our front page, using what SvelteKit is calling internal fetch API calls, which aren't actually HTTP calls. They just find the method that needs that defines this endpoint and runs it internally. So no extra HTTP requests. That was kind of cool. But those are the things that we've done. Let me know what's more interesting. Mike is asking, can we self-host Docker images in Cloudflare? No, but I think Nico said, or some people in the Discord have been messaging me that one of the things that Cloudflare is thinking of adding, or maybe has on early access or has broadcasted, I don't know, is some Dockerized applications to offer a Docker solution, things you can put in Docker, then deploy it on Cloudflare. So as I understand, you cannot do anything that's like, oh, I have a Docker container, can I put it on Cloudflare? The answer for now is no, but I think that's going to change in the future, and that'd be fun to look into. If you really need a Docker endpoint, something you can put in Docker for whatever reason, like the Pocket-based CMS that we've shown in a different live stream, I still use Fly. I still use Fly.io for that sort of thing. And of course, AWS has solutions there. They have their version of Kubernetes. Google Cloud has stuff like that, but not Docker for now. Do I have anything here? No. So nothing public, but I think it may be coming in 2025. Let's see. For this project, we may need an API maybe not with bun, but with Hono.js without bun, which we could deploy on Cloudflare, which I think you may be interested into looking at, Mike. But I think that's gonna be it for today. I will have to get ready for traveling all around the world. And I will catch you on later. Let me know in the Discord or the comments or wherever what you'd like to see next. I've proposed a few things that we can do with the same app, the emoji of the day app, like picking the emojis or extending the API, securing it, having filtering, that sort of thing. But, you know, things change. Maybe there's going to be something even more exciting to try in the future. Let me know. I always love showing things that you're curious about, that you think are interesting. If I think I can do a decent job showing them, I will experiment. And so SvelteKit's Hono.js is a cool one. So the API that we've created internally with SvelteKit, we could have a Hono.js API. That would fall in the category of extending our API here. So that's a cool one. I will be thinking about it and gathering more ideas and see. Maybe we'll go with that one. Ban adapter, unlikely. I haven't liked using it in the past. I don't see the point. So I won't be using ban for that one. But who knows? By the next live stream, things may have changed. We'll see. All right. Again, thank you everyone for spending a bit of time with me. Hope you coded along. I hope you learned something or something sparked in your head. You got inspired to do something now. Special thanks to the people in the chat keeping me extra company. Take care and I'll see you around. Bye.